Geopolitical dynamics, oil and gas wars in the Eastern Mediterranean, the conflict in Gaza and beyond. 186,000 dead Palestinians is a genocide by Israel. The arrogance and above the law of the so-called chosen people should be understood by the rest of the world. The UN is a puppet that takes its orders from the cabal, a useless organization that takes the money and obeys its masters. Many people still do not understand the why behind the war in Gaza. This conflict, like many others in the region, is fundamentally about oil and gas. Israel and the U.S. are fully aware of the offshore oil and gas reserves and are instigating these wars to seize these resources. Corrupt leaders head so-called terrorist organizations, receiving bribes for their roles. Groups like Hamas and Hezbollah are funded by the same powerful entities. Arabs and Palestinians are being killed for profit. The surprise attack by Hamas on October 7th, while MOSSAD and Shin Bet were seemingly unprepared despite warnings from Egypt and other intelligence agencies, is reminiscent of Pearl Harbor and 9/11. Israel will attack Lebanon and seize their offshore oil and gas reserves. The true conflict is in the Eastern Mediterranean due to its vast energy resources. The U.S. and Israel aim to prevent Turkey from claiming its share of these resources. I foresee a major war involving Turkey, the U.S., and Israel, as I have predicted for a long time. Iran, often portrayed as the antagonist, is actually a puppet of the U.S. and Israel, playing the role of the bad cop. Historically, Iran has been an adversary of both Turkey and the Arab world. The Middle East has long been a focal point of geopolitical tension, primarily due to its abundant natural resources, particularly oil and gas. The conflict in Gaza, like many others in the region, is deeply intertwined with the struggle for control over these valuable resources. This article examines the underlying motives behind the Gaza conflict, the role of international actors, the influence of powerful oil lobbies, and the indirect factors like intelligence agencies that shape the geopolitical landscape. Additionally, it explores Turkey's strategic position in the Mediterranean and its implications for U.S.-Turkey relations. The Gaza conflict, beyond the surface. The Gaza conflict, often portrayed through a lens of religious and ethnic tensions, has significant economic and strategic dimensions. The region's offshore oil and gas reserves are a critical factor driving the conflict. Israel and the United States are acutely aware of these reserves and have been accused of instigating conflicts to secure control over them. The staggering death toll among Palestinians, with reports of 186,000 deaths, has led some to label it as genocide. The disproportionate use of force by Israel has drawn international condemnation and raised questions about the motivations behind such actions. Critics argue that the pursuit of natural resources is a significant, though often understated, driver of this violence. The role of terrorist organizations. Groups like Hamas and Hezbollah are frequently cited as key players in the conflict. However, there are claims that these organizations are manipulated by powerful entities, receiving funding and support to perpetuate the violence. This perspective suggests that corrupt leaders within these groups accept bribes and serve the interests of larger geopolitical players. The surprise attack by Hamas on October 7th, despite prior warnings from intelligence agencies like Egypt's, draws parallels to historical events such as Pearl Harbor and 9/11. These incidents often lead to significant geopolitical shifts and justify large-scale military responses. The Eastern Mediterranean, a new front line. The conflict scope extends beyond Gaza to the Eastern Mediterranean, a region rich in energy resources. Israel's potential future actions against Lebanon to seize offshore oil and gas reserves highlight this broader strategy. The U.S. and Israel's efforts to limit Turkey's access to these resources further complicate the situation, potentially setting the stage for a larger conflict involving Turkey, the U.S., and Israel. Iran, often depicted as a central antagonist in Middle Eastern conflicts, is argued by some to be playing a role scripted by the U.S. and Israel. Historically, Iran has had adversarial relationships with both Turkey and the Arab world, positioning it as a convenient bad cop in the geopolitical drama. The influence of oil lobbies. Oil lobbies wield significant influence over the policies and actions of Middle Eastern countries. These powerful entities often operate behind the scenes, shaping the decisions of national leaders to ensure their interests are protected. The complex game played by oil lobbies involves funding political campaigns, lobbying for favorable legislation, and even orchestrating coups to install compliant leaders. Presidents and prime ministers in the Middle East often find themselves under immense pressure from these lobbies. The promise of economic benefits and the threat of political instability are used to manipulate these leaders into aligning with the interests of the oil industry. This dynamic adds another layer of complexity to the already volatile geopolitical landscape. The role of intelligence agencies. Intelligence agencies like the CIA and MI6 have long been involved in the geopolitics of the Middle East. Acting as economic hitmen, these agencies employ various tactics to secure their nation's interests in the region's natural resources. Their methods include covert operations, disinformation campaigns, and direct intervention in the internal affairs of sovereign states. These agencies often work in concert with oil lobbies and other powerful entities to destabilize governments that threaten their interests. By supporting opposition groups, orchestrating coups, and engaging in sabotage, they create conditions favorable for the extraction and control of oil and gas resources. Turkey's strategic position in the Mediterranean. Turkey's geographical location and its control over crucial maritime routes make it a significant player in the eastern Mediterranean. The discovery of substantial oil and gas reserves in the region has heightened the importance of maritime laws and borders, leading to disputes over territorial waters and exclusive economic zones, EEZs. Turkey's assertive policies in claiming its share of these resources have put it at odds with the U.S. and its allies. As a NATO member, Turkey's relationship with the U.S. is complex. While ostensibly allies, their conflicting interests in the Mediterranean have brought them into direct conflict. The U.S., seeking to control the region's resources, views Turkey's actions as a threat to its strategic interests. This tension is exacerbated by Turkey's increasingly close ties with Russia, as it seeks alternative alliances to counterbalance U.S. influence. The United Nations, a puppet organization? The United Nations, UN, has often been criticized for its perceived ineffectiveness and bias. Detractors argue that the UN is a puppet organization, taking orders from powerful cabals and failing to act independently or effectively. The organization's inability to address the root causes of conflicts like the one in Gaza and its reliance on funding from influential member states supports this view. Conclusion. The conflict in Gaza is a complex interplay of historical, religious, and economic factors. At its core, however, lies the battle for control over natural resources, particularly oil and gas. The actions of international actors, the manipulation of terrorist organizations, the strategic significance of the Eastern Mediterranean, and the influence of oil lobbies and intelligence agencies underscore the multifaceted nature of this conflict. As the situation evolves, the potential for broader regional conflict looms large, with significant implications for global stability and geopolitical dynamics. Understanding the why behind these conflicts is crucial for comprehending the broader geopolitical landscape and the motivations driving the actions of nations and organizations involved. The intricate web of interests, from the overt actions of national governments to the covert operations of intelligence agencies and the pervasive influence of oil lobbies, highlights the complexity and depth of geopolitical struggles in the Middle East. Additionally, Turkey's strategic position and its shifting alliances underscore the fluid and often contradictory nature of international relations in the pursuit of natural resources.